Greetings, fellow humans. My name is MartianBuu. Hearthstone recently came out with some announcements that I'm personally extremely excited for. So I just wanted to go over what they announced is going to happen soon and my thoughts on it. Introducing the core set and classic format. We've got some major changes on the horizon we're ready to discuss. When card sets from Year of the Dragon, Rise of Shadows, Saviors of Uldum, Descent of Dragons, Demon Hunter Initiate rotate to Wild at the launch of our next expansion, we're planning to move the basic and classic sets to Wild as well to make way for the new core set. For me, this is a long overdue change. I think that having a large pool of cards eternally stuck in Standard was a mistake. The whole point of having the Standard format is to make the game feel fresh every year, and having a large pool of powerful cards eternally stay in the format and define it for a long time makes that a lot harder. So they're going to keep a lot of the basic and classic cards in that set, but from now on they're going to change it every year. So that set is going to feel different from year to year. Introducing the core set. The core set replaces basic and classic cards in standard format and will contain a selection of 235 cards. After set rotation this year, standard will include cards from Year of the Phoenix, the next expansion, and the new core set. The core set will be free for all players. That's crazy. That's like so many free cards, which is great because the reason that they were giving us so much dust when they would Hall of Fame a card is because they made a promise that the basic and classic cards are going to remain eternally in standard. So like you are safe to invest in your classic set because they're always going to be available in standard. So whenever they would remove one of those from the standard pool, they would give you your complete dust refund while letting you keep the card because there was an expectation that having invested in that card, you would always be able to use it. Now, to make up for everything being fair game to not be in standard anymore, they're just giving you all 235 cards that are part of what will become the new basic and classic. So this new core set. So that's really cool. Like your investment was paid off by now having it for free. You don't have to feel like you're missing out because you lost all of those cards. Instead, you get all of the new ones right off the bat. The core set will be free for all players and will replace basic and classic and standard as a curated selection of 235 cards intended to provoke a modern collection of starting cards to players of all types and to make Hearthstone even more approachable for newcomers. Some of the core cards are returning from previous sets, some are remaining favorites, and 29 cards are completely new. There will be 88 cards from classic, 54 cards from basic, 55 from Wild, 4 from Ashes of Outland, they're going to be Demon Hunter cards, 4 from the Initiate set, and 1 card from the Hall of Fame, which is Shadow Form. 29 new cards. So, cards returning from Wild, I'm primarily a Wild player, so it stresses me out a little bit. The reason that I'm more apprehensive about cards coming back from Wild is things are so much more likely to get nerfed for standard than they are for Wild. So like if a card that is benign in Wild gets time in the limelight in standard again and it ends up being busted just because all cards are more likely to be busted in standard, it's just more likely to get nerfed. If the way that they handled this was just like if a Wild card is busted for standard and instead of nerfing it, they just rotate it because you got the card for free anyway, so you're not losing anything. That would make me really happy. Like then I'd be 100% stoked. Like bring any card back from Wild as long as if it's a problem in standard, it's just going back to Wild instead of getting nerfed. Then that's great, but I don't know that they'll handle it that way, so we'll see. It's cool to get 29 new cards. Usually when they add a card to the core set, it ends up being bad, or like what has been our core set. It ends up being pretty bad, but that was because those cards are meant to be around forever because they were part of the classic set. So they're designed bad on purpose so that they don't compete with expansion cards. Like the basic set, you'll earn core cards by leveling up each class. All core set class cards are rewarded between levels 1 through 10 for each class, and neutral core set cards will be unlocked based on the sum of all your class levels combined up to the combined level of 60. Golden versions of the core set can be unlocked by completing achievements associated with winning games of each class. So the idea is, if you want all of the mage cards, you just have to level mage to level 10, and then you have all of them. If you want all of the neutral cards, you have to have earned 60 levels between all the classes. So you don't have to earn level 60 on mage and on demon hunter and on warrior. You don't have to get to level 60 on 10 different classes to unlock all the neutral cards. You just have to have counted to 60 between the classes. So if you have like level 30 on mage and level 30 on hunter, that's enough to get all of the neutral cards. What's probably going to happen is you'll get to level 10 on 6 different classes, and then you'll unlock the cards that way. But that's all you need to do, and I think that's a good deal. When you log in after rotation, you'll automatically be granted the new core set cards equal to your current level for each class. Asterisk, core set cards will be available in your collection automatically at set rotation. Players will not see an in-game pop-up when this occurs. Unlike how Basic and Classic functioned previously, the core set will be refreshed each year. At the end of every Hearthstone year, a new core set will take the place of the previous, comprised of new and existing cards. When that happens, the core set cards that are rotating will be swapped with new ones in your collection automatically. So that's pretty cool. I assume that means that if they make a new card for core, and then they decide they don't want that to be in core the next year, that'll rotate to wild. I hope that's how it's handled. It could be that they'll just take it out. Like it doesn't really specify here, but I would assume it would just rotate like everything else. Introducing the Legacy set. Basic and Classic cards will join Wild in the form of a card set named Legacy. When the core set is added at rotation, we'll be retiring the Hall of Fame entirely. The Basic and Classic sets will move to Wild under a new name, the Legacy set, which is where most cards from the Hall of Fame will go as well. There are a few exceptions. Gang Greymane, Baku the Moon Eater, and other Hall of Fame cards from Witchwood will return to the Witchwood set, and Shadowform will return to Standard as part of the core set. With the Classic set joining the Legacy set in Wild, all Classic cards and their golden versions will be craftable and disenchantable. Basic cards and their golden versions will be granted to all players that have Wild unlocked for free at rotation, as will the normal versions of Demon Hunter Initiate cards. Golden Demon Hunter Initiate cards will still be craftable and disenchantable. So I think it's cool that Baku and Gen are going back to Witchwood. I think that that's something that should have happened as soon as Witchwood rotated, but better late than never. It makes me wonder, why don't they just call it Classic? Because it's just going to be old Classic set, right? Do they have to rename it? Why can't it just be called Classic? I don't know. You know what? It occurs to me that this is the third name for that set, right? Like, initially it was just called Expert Packs, and then they changed it to Classic later once they started adding more expansions, and now they're changing it to Legacy. So like it was first Expert, then it was Classic, and now it's Legacy. I don't know why. And like you could say like they changed the name so that it can differentiate from the Classic format, but the Classic format is based off of the Classic set, so I don't know why that would be confusing. Introducing the Classic format. Craft decks and compete using Hearthstone's original 240 cards as they were in 2014, the year the game launched. We're excited to share that we'll be launching the Classic format alongside set rotation and our next expansion. The Classic format invites players to craft decks and compete using Hearthstone's original 240 cards as they were in 2014, the year that Hearthstone launched. I'm so excited for this. Like, I have loved Hearthstone for the most part, consecutively since I started playing it in Classic, but it was in its best form originally. And for me, that's because there was less like random generation. I think that things started to kind of go downhill around GVG when you had like Crackle and Piloted Shredder and stuff like that, randomly deciding games. I understand that Knife Juggler and Ragnaros existed in Classic, and that did matter, but GVG was like the start of that being a mainstay, like that being design. This felt much more like a card game, original Hearthstone. So like being able to play with like not only a version of Hearthstone that was more based around like the cards that you chose to include in your deck, and with your old favorites that have just been demolished over the years. Ironbeak Owl used to cost 2. Leroy used to cost 4, which was great for Shadow Step. It was great for Power Overwhelming. So like something you used to be able to do without an Emperor Thaurissan trigger was Leroy, Power Overwhelming the Leroy, and Faceless Manipulator the Leroy for 20 damage. And then like Soulfire cost 0, so you could deal 8 more over the top. It's just like, I'm so excited for this change. People have said like, you know, you're going to play this format to death for like a month, and then the format's going to be dead. But like, I view this as something that I'll just come back to periodically. Like, Handlock is easily my favorite deck in Hearthstone ever, and now I get to play it again in the way that I knew it. It's still up in the air about like whether or not they're going to add more sets later on or anything like that. I hope that they don't, because I feel like this is a good cutoff. But I think this is an immensely cool idea, and I'm going to play a lot of it myself, both probably on and off stream. When logging in after a patch for the next expansion, before expansion content unlocks, your entire collection of basic, classic, and relevant Hall of Fame cards will be mirrored and available for deck building in the classic format, as they were in the patch 1.0.0.5832 of June 2014. After we made a few important changes, with any and all balance changes since then reverted. Yes, in the classic format, Warsong Commander can give minions charge, Holy Smite can go face, and Leroy Jenkins will cost 4 mana. If you want to relive the old school Hearthstone experience, classic will be the place for you. So Warsong's not going to matter too much. Warsong became really good after Grim Patron came out. There's like a Worgen deck that you could play. The card Charge looks different, but like, this is really cool. So this, like, classic is going to be the third format, right? You're going to have wild, you're going to have standard, and you're going to have classic. This is what the little classic symbol will look like when you're toggling which format you want to play. Then you have wild, which will have legacy in the rotated card sets, and standard, which will be the core plus the current card sets as it is presently. Moving forward, unlocking Wild format will also grant access to the Classic format. Classic's reward system, rank system, and seasons will function the same as Standard and Wild, and like those formats, Classic will have its own matchmaking pool. You will be able to challenge your friends in the Classic format from day one, and games played in the Classic format will count towards any relevant achievements. Classic format cards will appear in their own section within the Collection Manager, and Classic format decks will have a unique border on your deck selection page to differentiate from your Standard and Wild decks. Speaking of the deck selection page, we're also excited to share that we'll be increasing the total number of deck slots from 18 to 27 alongside the release of Classic. So for me, I don't care about extra deck slots. 18 is usually way more than I need. If I'm like just playing the decks that I'm going to play, I usually only have like 3 or 4 populated at most. And if like something's been sitting in my like 4 decks that I use for a while, I usually destroy it and then rebuild it from scratch anyway. So like, I don't need more deck slots, but I'm not every player. So a lot of people have been saying they want more deck slots, and here's 9 more. Why are we doing increments of 9 still when there are 10 classes? I'm not sure. Maybe it's a coding issue. Maybe they think you don't need a deck for every class for every format. Maybe something. I don't know. But you wanted more deck slots. Now you have more, because just like when they added deck slots last time, there's now an additional mode. So 27 decks for you. Classic packs will now add to your collection from the Classic format, as well as the Legacy set in Wild. If you have Knife Juggler in your collection, you'll have 2 versions of it. One that can be used in Wild with 2 attack and 2 health, and one you can use in Classic format as it was in 2014 with 3 attack and 2 health. Cards that were added to the Classic set later in Hearthstone's history will not be usable in the Classic format or draw from Classic packs, but will be craftable as part of the Legacy set in Wild. So that's all the cards that were printed to replace cards that they'd rotated with the Hall of Fame. So you're not going to get those out of Classic packs anymore. And will you get the basic cards that became part of the Legacy set? I'm not sure. Classic packs will now award cards that were in Classic back when Classic was around, and no longer the cards that they've added to it since then. Lastly, since cards from Classic packs are no longer usable in Standard, we'll be replacing Classic packs in various rewards, such as Tavern Brawls and achievements, with other recent packs. I do hope they'll introduce this a little bit early. I don't want them to release it alongside a new expansion and then have two really exciting things compete for my attention. If they just release this a couple weeks or a month prior to when the new set comes out, then we could all get this out of our system and completely focus on the new expansion once it comes. So that about wraps everything up. I am extremely excited about these changes. I think that the new core set is going to be really cool for standard, and the classic mode is going to be awesome for people who, like me, miss it, and also for the people who never got to experience it. You've been hearing us boomers talk about how amazing classic Hearthstone was. I'm going to be jamming a ton of handlock games and OG Control Warrior, and it's going to be super awesome. If you are interested in taking a closer look at this update, I'll put a link to it in the description. Let me know in the comments if you had any questions or if there's anything I missed, or just to let me know how you like me doing videos like these. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you next time.